for your rough? Sounds like you need personal service.
I do?
Yes, to print the blueprints. See Mark at the Personal Service Center. He can print blueprints, notarize permit applications, print and mail out invoices, and even provide great-looking business cards.
Personal Service Center. That's the one on the corner of Northeast 25th Avenue and 24th Street, right?
Just look for the yellow signs. Your pedigree palace will be a reality in no time.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
The Affordable Health Care Act. This is an interesting topic for me. We've had so many discussions about this. When it was first being discussed, it's hard to say I know anything about anything. Everything I think that I form an opinion on is based on conversations we have with our guests, or things that our guests send us, or things that I read in the paper or on the internet or whatever. And so, bottom line is, at the beginning when we first started talking about Obamacare, I was against it. If I told you I was against it right now, I'd be a hypocrite, because I benefited from it this year. Because I don't know if you realize that in small-time radio, you really... I'm not complaining about what I make, but you really don't make much. Okay, so it really helped me. It really did. However, there were still some problems with it that I saw as far as being the recipient of somebody else's tax money helping to pay for my health care. I'm glad it did, because this year, the first year of my whole life, I really ever needed medical help. And thank goodness I had it. So I'd be a hypocrite if I talked bad about it. However, from what I understand from guests, we've had other suggestions made, and maybe the best argument in favor of Obamacare is that it was the beginning. It's like the Model T. You know, maybe it can be tweaked, and maybe something good can come eventually from it. There was a story this morning that taxpayers will dole out nearly $10 billion more next year to help people like me. I'm not going to hide that. But that's a lot of money to ask taxpayers. Let's see. Federal regulators extended the midnight deadline for Affordable Care Act to tonight. I guess the website once again was jammed up with people trying to get it, and my big complaint about that whole open enrollment period is that how can you fine somebody for not having it if you're going to shut the door on getting it?
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense to me. But
exactly.
Who knows more about this? Mostly everybody. Josh Blackman especially. He's our guest. He's an attorney. He's an associate professor of law at the South Texas College of Law, specializing in constitutional law. And we could make a big argument that it was unconstitutional, and I wouldn't disagree with that. He's with the United States Supreme Court. He's the intersection of law and technology. I'm probably reading this and making mistakes. He was selected by Forbes magazine for the 30 Under 30 in Law and Policy. He testified before the House Judiciary Committee on the constitutionality of executive action on immigration and health care. And he's written a book about all of the above. It's called Unraveled: Obamacare, Religious Liberty, and Executive Power. I know I'm going to enjoy this conversation, but I wanted to kind of give you my side of this before we went into it. Josh Blackman, good morning, sir. What an honor.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on. Where are you calling from?
Houston, Texas.
All right. Well, thank you for being on. How's the weather in Houston? It's got to be nice there, huh?
Surprisingly cold this week, like the rest of the country. It's actually in the 30s now. This is unprecedented, if I may.
Really? Isn't that weird? It's kind of, the country's upside down a little bit. So does the book make a case for keeping Obamacare and tweaking it, or for making a case to just do away with it and go back to what we once had?
My new book, Unraveled, makes a case that the law is indeed unraveling, and whether we like it or not, in its present form, it's unstable. And I wrote this before the election of Donald Trump. I wrote this under the assumption that the next president would try to help fix it. I wrote that it's basically impossible. So regardless whether you like it or not, the way this law was designed was not meant for long term.
Okay, so by design, it's not supposed to go long term.
No. I mean, if you look at its architects, they were pretty transparent. And this was not designed as a permanent solution. It was a temporary way to achieve single payer at some point. The only problem is the law's falling apart quicker than they anticipated. They thought maybe it'll last 10, 15, 20 years. It barely lasted 3. In fact, we are now in the 4th year of open enrollment, and the wheels are falling off.
And one of my major complaints about it is that it was mandated. I mean, he took it to the Supreme Court and they made it a law, and then he mandated it. I think other people, everybody, including myself, would have embraced it better in the beginning if it wasn't mandated.
Right. So the entire way the Affordable Care Act works, it says, we're going to make sure insurers can't discriminate based on whatever conditions you may have. And that sounds lovely until you realize how much it costs. Insuring sick people is very expensive. And the way they tried to minimize that cost was to impose what's called the individual mandate, that you're required to maintain health insurance. This way, people couldn't take advantage of it. Imagine if you were uninsured, you got sick, and in the ambulance ride to the hospital, you went to your iPhone and you bought insurance. That would be a disaster. So the mandate says, if you don't maintain insurance, we'll hit you with a penalty, and we'll use that penalty to subsidize sicker people having insurance. The problem is the penalty was probably far too low, if anything, and too many people said, screw this, I'm not going to buy insurance, I'm simply going to go without it. More sick people bought into it, and the healthy people stayed outside because now insurance was largely unaffordable for a lot of people. So it created this weird dynamic where sick people had insurance, people who needed it got it, and people who didn't need it still didn't get it, and this is why we've seen such increases in premiums and the amount of taxpayer subsidies meant to defray those costs.
Can you help me understand? Now, I'm going to tell you that I'm guessing a lot of our listeners get this, and I just don't get it. So maybe I'm asking you to talk to me and people like me. But can you help us understand what is the case against the single payer? Why is single payer the bad thing? Why do we not want that?
The number one critique of single payer is that it leads to rationing. If you go to any other country that has some sort of a universal single-payer model, you have to wait. And some government bureaucrat decides when you'll get your hip replacement, or when you can get your regular checkup, or when you can get some sort of routine surgery. Unless it's deemed an emergency treatment, the government decides what doctors you see, what quality of care you get, and when you get it. And that's a choice that's deemed inconsistent with how Americans try to acquire services. When they get sick, they want a doctor. If they don't like this doctor, they go to a different doctor. If they want a hip replacement, they'll get their hip replacement. And this is the inevitable consequence of state-run medicine. You cannot avoid it. Now, if you're really rich, you can always go and buy a private doctor. But for all the other schmoes who can't afford private insurance in the United Kingdom, they're stuck with the crumbling national health service.
The subtitle of your book, Unraveled, is Obamacare, Religious Liberty, and Executive Power. Talk about religious liberty and how you talk about it in the book.
One of the most unexpected aspects of the ACA was how it required businesses to provide their female employees with access to contraceptive. Before the ACA, nearly 90% of businesses already gave their female employees contraceptives. It really wasn't a big issue. Where this did come up, though, was with certain religious employers, religious universities, religious charities, and indeed for-profit corporations that had religious identities. They did not include payments for these products. The Affordable Care Act said, no, you have to. And then you had first the Hobby Lobby, which I'm guessing you have stores down in Florida, the craft store, and this is owned by basically a family of Christians. And they said, we find it sinful to provide the morning after pill and certain other contraceptives to our employees. This went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, okay, you can't make them buy this. The second major case involved the Little Sisters of the Poor. This is an order of nuns that run nursing homes for the elderly. You would think the Little Sisters need to give their employees birth control. They're nuns, right? But they do employ people who are not Catholic. And the government said, you are required to provide your employees with the morning after pill. The nuns, as you can suggest, objected. This case went all the way to the Supreme Court. This case, though, wasn't resolved entirely because by that point, Justice Scalia had passed away, and the court was down to 8 justices. As a result, there wasn't enough of a vote one way or the other to resolve the question. And now I think that decision will be resolved by whatever Donald Trump and his government decides to do.
And, the thing about birth control, I mean, the public health units, even in our community, if a woman wants the birth control, they can go to those public health entities and get them for no cost. That's why I don't understand how come the government had to impose it in the private sector.
Right. Birth control is a surprisingly cheap form of medicine, and it's readily available in so many different ways through government subsidies and otherwise. What the government is trying to achieve here is to give it to women seamlessly, that they don't have to take any extra action, that it comes to their normal insurance plan with a regular doctor, that they don't have to go to a government clinic or something else. I think this was overambitious. They were so intent on providing this product without any burden to the women that they largely looked away at the true cost of religious liberty by imposing this mandate.
Wow. The book is called Unraveled, and it is written by our guest, Josh Blackman. He is in Houston, Texas right now. We're at 30 degrees. Just thought I would rub that in a little bit. And the subtitle is Obamacare, Religious Liberty, and Executive Power. I wanted to bring into the conversation, we have to take a break, but I want to bring into the conversation, and I know it's not perhaps specifically what you address, but I can see a way to connect it to what you address. And that is the issue that people are talking about today regarding the electoral college votes, and how the people are better represented because of the electoral college. That's my opinion, by the way. So let's take a little break and continue with this fascinating conversation. As always, we'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. On this Monday, clouds and some intervals of sunshine and warm with a passing shower, the high 80 to 84. Mostly cloudy and mild Monday night, lows in the upper 50s to mid-60s. Tuesday will be mostly cloudy and somewhat cooler with a shower in the afternoon. Near the coast, the high 70 to 77. For Wednesday, clouds and sunshine. Chance of a shower along the coast, the high 70 to 74. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Central Florida Eye Institute is the area's leader in laser vision correction. From high-definition refraction surgery and LASIK vision correction to custom cataract, glaucoma, and diabetic treatment, you can count on Dr. Crowley and his effective, friendly staff to provide you with the quality care you deserve. Call 352-237-8400 for an appointment or more information. That number again is 352-237-8400. Looking forward to service your vision needs. When you go into Automax, Marion County's #1 pre-owned dealer for over 15 years, you won't take the new car depreciation because Automax saves you thousands on late model vehicles. Browse the inventory online at automaxocala.com. Then come down to see the great vehicles and upfront pricing in person. Compare up to 60 models inside the climate control showroom. So take your time. No high pressure, no gimmicks, no games. On the corner of 17th and Easy Street. Automax. Quality cars, outlet prices.
All right, 12 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. We have on the phone Josh Blackman. He's written the book called Unraveled, Obamacare, Religious Liberty, and Executive Power. Josh has an amazing background. He's an attorney. He's a professor at South Texas College of Law. So he specializes in constitutional law. And I wanted to bring into this conversation, not to distract from the focal point of the book, but because it's in today's news, the Electoral College issue. There was a story this morning, Josh, by the way. First of all, you probably heard about the celebrity video where they're telling the electors to vote their conscience and not vote for Trump. And there was another story this morning that filmmaker, what's his name? Moore?
David Moore.
What's his name?
Moore. Michael Moore.
Michael Moore. He wants to pay the fine for any elector who wants to vote his conscience because some states will fine them if they don't. Those people who don't get the Electoral College, if you look at the map of the voters who voted for Hillary Clinton, it is a small geographical area of the country. It's like New York City, it's Los Angeles, it's the highly populated areas. Mm-hmm. The rest of the country, if you look at the map, was much in favor of Trump. Although
Yes.
the majority of the popular vote went to Hillary. This is why the Electoral College, in my opinion, is important, because we're supposed to elect somebody based on what's best for everybody, not just what's best for the highly populated areas. And I'm guessing that the philosophy that people embrace in LA and in New York reflects life there, and it doesn't reflect life in North Dakota or in Oklahoma, I'm guessing. And so if you have a president who can use executive power, and I know that's part of the title, this is the connection I'm trying to make here. You often wonder: as a president uses executive power, is he really representing the people at large, or is he representing a special interest? And I know you can argue that every president has done this. I think we had the story on that once before.
Yeah.
But can you try to make a connection between that for me? And if I haven't thrown too much of a curveball to this conversation?
No, not a curveball at all. The Electoral College was designed to prevent certain influential people and states from dominating the entire country. If we look at the map now, we've had a pure popular vote basis. Democrats could simply win the presidency by only campaigning in California, New York, and a couple other states. They wouldn't have to worry about the other 40 states. I think that would be a mistake. We have a number of small population states that still have electoral votes, and because it's winner takes all, they have to invest in reaching out to them, and that's something that people want to see. Now, in terms of executive power, when the executive takes action that are without Congress's backing, they have their weakest force. And one of the reasons why the Electoral College is important is you have to do every congressional district in the country and compete one by one to try to win. You can't simply skip over. So when the people of America are voting for Congress one way and the executive goes a totally different way, there's this a problem that I think the American people recognize. And I have to note the Electoral College was invented by Alexander Hamilton, who's a Broadway superstar. But
Yeah.
even
I took a second.
He was. So, but I don't think these people actually read what Hamilton wrote elsewhere. All they read is Federal 68. They haven't read. Hamilton was very much in favor of a strong executive in ways that I don't think Martin Sheen, who pretended to be president, would like very much. Yeah, I saw this video. I didn't even know 90% of the people in the video. I can tell you who they were if you asked me.
Yeah, me either.
So
I know.
I think they're wasting their time.
Okay, but here's my question: if the president agrees with those who cast the popular vote, in other words, if President Obama, and he's in president office right now, or if President Trump, if he decides to agree with the blue areas of the country, and has an executive order that reflects the beliefs of those areas, doesn't it contradict what the whole idea of the Electoral College was about, which was to keep it fair for everybody?
Right. The more important point is, if he simply ignores half the country through his various executive actions, he needs to stand for re-election, right? And then he may not do so if he disregards half the populace.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work so much in a second term because he's term limited. But the important point is, when the president acts, he should be acting on behalf of all Americans and not simply his constituency. That's probably not very true most of the time, but the Electoral College at least forces the issue of making the president think about all 50 states and not only those that are blue.
Okay, so in the book Unraveled, I want to make sure we're fair to the book. Is that part of the case that you're making, is that things are becoming unraveled? And is the unraveling actually a good thing?
Well, the ACA falling apart is at once good and bad, right? It's bad because in the short term, there will be people who will be affected by it. It sounds wonderful that everyone has this subsidized insurance that's so much better than what they had before, but it's come at an insane cost that insurance companies cannot manage. So there will be some dislocation during whatever comes next. But the silver lining on that cloud is perhaps there could be some other replacement that actually takes a broader focus that benefits a wide swath of the population, and not only those who are sick and poor who are injured before the law existed. So there are both good and bad aspects to this unraveling of the Affordable Care Act.
And the people still have to pay the premiums, the people that have this kind of insurance, as with any insurance. But it also boils down to the amount of the deductible. If a person is following the rules, they sign up for Obamacare, they pay their premium every month. If something horrendous happens, they're going to have a really, really huge deductible that they have to meet. And I think that's another issue here, because there are different levels
right.
of plans. Mm-hmm.
The ACA has used, fuzzy math, if I may, to shield the costs. Everyone says, wow, my premium's gone down, whatever. but your deductible's gone up. And when you have a high deductible, you have to pay so much money out of pocket before you get a penny of benefit that in many cases these Obamacare plans are worthless unless you have some sort of catastrophe where you actually hit the deductible. So people have insurance they don't find valuable, and that's why you're finding people not signing up for these sorts of policies.
Let me go to the phone. Thank you for calling in, for waiting. You're on the air with Josh Blackman.
Yes, sir. I'm a retired federal employee, and I kept my insurance, which was through my union, and so I kept my union membership. But the model of the Federal Employees Health Benefit Plan is probably what Affordable Care Act should have been modeled after, instead of this three-headed chicken bureaucracy that was crafted by a bunch of camel builders. A reformulating of this act, it should look more like the FEHBP than what it currently looks like. That's my comment. I'll hang up.
That's an interesting comment. So could it be, if it went the way he said, unraveled and then re-raveled to make it better?
Well, the FEHBP, the Federal Employees Health Benefit Plan, operates so well because the government pays 75% of the cost. Any policy where your employer is paying nearly 3/4 of the cost is going to be amazing, because the employee only pays barely a quarter and is very low deductible.
I gotcha. Okay.
Effectively, that's moving towards not quite a single payer, but maybe a 75% single payer. The government's paying for almost the entire damn thing, which is not immoral. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. But if we were to pay for 75% of the health care of all Americans, it would like dwarf defense. It would dwarf every other cost we have, and basically make healthcare our primary concern. I mean, Lee Iacocca, who was a former executive of Chrysler, once said that we're a healthcare company that also makes cars, because their single biggest cost was insuring their union employees. If you put enough money in something, it will probably work better. But that would require a significant increase in taxes and cut in spending of elsewhere.
I think ultimately we are, and this almost sounds cliche because we hear it so much, but ultimately we are the boss of the president. Collectively, we are the boss. But we can't be a good boss if we don't educate ourselves, and that's why I think books like yours really help us do our due diligence in trying to make sure that whoever is the president, whether we agree with the politics or not, but if the decisions are going to be influenced by the letters we write to our Congress, then we need to know a little bit about it. And it is a lot confusing, not a little confusing. It's a lot confusing. So that's why I like these kind of conversations and these types of books. Josh Blackman is the author of Unraveled. Josh, how do we get the book?
Well, go to Amazon. You can buy the copy of Unraveled, or go to my blog, joshblackman.com.
Okay.
When you were doing the research on everything, did you find anything that surprised you about the health insurance, or did you find anything like that?
I think the biggest surprise was how arrogant the drafters of this law were. They simply assumed that if they passed this thing in 2010 on a straight party line vote, once everyone realized how awesome Obamacare is, it would all fall in line, Republicans and Democrats alike. That prediction simply has not borne out, and that still to this day, 8 years later, people are clamoring to repeal and replace this law. I think there was a strong arrogance of the central planners and how people would suddenly support the law, and that hasn't happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there was an arrogance. We even experienced it here, because the truth is, I was trying as a host to ask questions, not to be making an opinion or to be contesting anything, but just to ask questions. And sometimes those who were in favor of it didn't take my questions in the spirit that I was offering them or asking them. I felt like they thought my questions were somehow combating them, and it just didn't make sense to me why they wouldn't just simply answer the questions. But Josh, I like the way this interview went a lot. Thank you for being on the air with us today. The book, again, is called Unraveled. Josh Blackman is the author, and his website is also where you would find his blog, joshblackman.com. And the book is available everywhere books are sold. Unraveled. Josh, thank you for being on the air with us today, and thank you for writing this book.
Thanks. Please call again.
Good stuff. We will be right back.
Broadcasting from the